Rion's eyes opened slowly. His head ached. Smoke filled the air, and sparks flew from the broken control panel in front of him. The crash had happened fast. One moment, he was flying through calm space, and the next, alarms were screaming in his ears. His small scout ship had been hit by a random energy blast while passing through a narrow zone between two empires. No warning, no enemy on the radar, just a bright flash, and then nothing but chaos. Now, his ship was lying tilted in the middle of a thick forest. The outside glass was cracked, but still holding. Trees with purple leaves and silver bark surrounded the area. Strange animal calls echoed in the distance. Rion reached for his belt and pulled out a small scanner. No signal, no contact. He was alone on this moon, and his only chance was to repair the ship or wait for someone to find him. Both choices felt impossible. He slowly stood up, pain shooting through his side. Nothing seemed broken, just bruised. His training kicked in. First, check the supplies, then set up shelter. He worked through the wreckage, pulling out what he could: emergency rations, a water filter, a small energy blade, and a portable shelter dome. He stepped out of the ship and looked around. The air smelled fresh, but there was a strange sharpness to it. The sky above was a dark teal, and the suns hung low on the horizon. It would be night soon. He worked quickly, setting up the shelter near the ship. It was enough to keep the wind and small creatures away. He placed a beacon outside, even though it had only a small chance of reaching orbit. Then he sat down and took a breath. Hours passed. Rion ate a small meal and drank some filtered water. His body felt sore, but his mind stayed alert. As night fell, strange glowing insects flew through the trees, and unfamiliar sounds filled the air. He kept his hand close to his blade and didn't sleep much. The next morning, the ground shook. It wasn't an earthquake. It was a sound he knew too well, a ship falling from the sky. Rion ran to a nearby hill and looked up. A bright line cut through the sky, heading straight down. Another crash. The second ship hit the ground with a loud boom, not far from where his head landed. He grabbed his scanner. Still no signal. But maybe whoever crashed had working equipment. Or maybe it was something worse. Cautiously, Rion moved through the trees. It took him nearly an hour to reach the crash site. He stayed low and quiet, moving like he was taught. When he reached the edge of the crash zone, he stopped behind a large stone. The ship was different, sleeker, painted in rich teal blue. This was not a human ship. The door of the alien ship opened slowly. Smoke poured out, and then a figure stepped out. It was a woman, tall, wearing a full suit of armor, colored to match. The ship, she moved with care, her weapon drawn, scanning the area. Her helmet hid her face, but the shape of her body and armor told Rion that she was a soldier. Rion froze. She hadn't seen him yet. He could sneak away, stay hidden, or he could risk approaching. She might be injured. She might have a working communicator. He stood slowly, keeping his hands open. "I'm not here to fight," he said loudly. The alien woman spun around, weapon aimed. She didn't fire. "I crashed yesterday," Rion continued. "My name is Rion. I'm human." She didn't answer. She stepped closer, her weapon still aimed. Rion stayed calm. "I'm alone. My ship is down too. No signal. You?" She finally lowered her weapon. Slowly, she nodded. They stared at each other for a long moment. Two soldiers from rival sides, alone on a strange moon. Neither had backup, neither had orders now. Rion pointed back toward his camp. "I have shelter, food, if you want to join me." She didn't move, "Or you can stay here. But the forest is full of creatures. Some are big." Still silent, she walked past him, toward his camp, back at the shelter. Rion gave her some water and food. She removed her helmet just enough to drink, but still didn't speak. Her face was mostly hidden, but he caught a glimpse. Her features were soft, smooth, not too different from a human's. She looked tired but strong. Later, as they sat by a small fire, Rion noticed her wince slightly while sitting. "Are you hurt?" he asked. She didn't answer. He tried again. "You're limping a little." This time, she looked at him directly. Without a word, she reached up, pressed something on her armor, and removed the upper part of her chest plate. Beneath it, a dark bruise spread across her side, but she sat tall and straight. "Do I look hurt to you?" she said at last, her voice calm and clear. Rian raised his hands in a half-smile. "All right," he said. "Just checking." They sat quietly again. No more words were needed. For now, they weren't enemies. They were just two survivors, alone on a strange moon, trying to stay alive. The next morning, Rian woke up early. The air was cooler, and a light mist hung over the trees. Birds with long tails chirped from the high branches. He stepped out of the shelter and stretched his sore arms. Every muscle in his body ached, but he felt lucky to be alive. He turned and looked toward the small campfire. The alien woman, Tira. He had heard her name spoken softly during the night, sat there sharpening a strange silver blade. She hadn't said much since yesterday. Just that one sentence, when she removed her armor. "Do I look hurt to you?" It echoed in Rian's mind. He still didn't know whether she was angry, proud, or just tired. He moved carefully, not wanting to startle her. "Morning," he said. She didn't look up, just nodded once. Rian gathered some dry leaves and sticks and started a small fire. Then he pulled out one of the food packs. It wasn't much, just dried fruit and protein wafers, but it was enough for now. He offered her half. She took it silently and started eating. After a long pause, Rian spoke again. "I checked the scanner. Still nothing. No signal. No ships nearby. We might be stuck here for a while." She finally looked at him. "How long?" He shrugged. "Could be days. Could be weeks." Tira stared into the forest. Her face stayed calm, but her eyes showed concern. Rian stood up and pointed toward the hill behind the camp. "I found a small stream up there yesterday. Clean water, I think. I'm going to bring some back." He waited, expecting her to follow, but she stayed seated. He took the empty container and walked away. The forest was quiet, but not peaceful. Every now and then, Rian heard strange rustling in the bushes or a distant cry that didn't sound like any animal he knew. He moved quickly, filled the container, and started back. When he returned, the shelter was empty. The fire was still burning, and her weapon was gone. Panic hit him for a second. "Tira," he called out, careful not to shout too loud. No answer. He looked around the area. No sign of struggle, no blood. Just broken branches leading into the forest. Rian grabbed his blade and followed the path. His heart beat faster. He didn't know why he cared so much. Maybe it was because she had shared food with him. Maybe it was because she didn't shoot him when she had the chance. He followed the trail for nearly 15 minutes before he heard something ahead. A loud growl. He moved slowly, hiding behind a thick tree. In a small clearing, he saw her. Tira stood with her back against a rock, holding her blade in front of her. A large creature, something like a mix between a bear and a lizard, circled her. It had dark fur, sharp claws, and green eyes. Tira waited calmly, her armor scratched, and her leg bent slightly. The creature charged. She stepped aside and slashed with her blade. It missed. She fell to one knee but quickly stood again. Rian didn't think. He ran forward, grabbed a large stick, and threw it at the creature's side. It turned and snarled at him. Tira used the moment to stab it in the leg. The creature howled and ran into the trees. Tira leaned against the rock, breathing hard. Rian rushed over. "You all right?" She nodded, trying to stand tall again. Her legs shook slightly. "You shouldn't have come alone," he said. She looked at him with tired eyes. "I can handle myself." "I saw that," Rian replied with a small smile. "But maybe next time we go together." They walked back to the camp slowly. Tira limped more now, and Rian offered his arm. She hesitated but then accepted his help. Back at the shelter, Rian helped her sit down and handed her some water. "We need better protection," he said. "Traps, fences, something to keep those things away." Tira pulled a small device from her belt and opened it. It was a scanner, different from his, but still broken. "I have tools," Some pieces still work. She said, if we combine them, we can build a signal booster. Rhea nodded. And maybe fix some weapons too. That afternoon, they worked side by side. They used parts from both crashed ships to build simple traps around the camp. Rian laid out a wire net while Tira placed noise sensors in the trees. It wasn't perfect, but it would help Dot as the sun lowered. They sat by the fire. Again, Tira rubbed her sore leg while Rian checked the beacon. Still no signal. He looked over at her. You know, I've fought your people before, he said. Not by choice, orders. She looked at him, expression unreadable. Same for me, she said. Rian nodded. Funny how word tells us who our enemies are. But the farce tells us something else. She didn't answer, but he saw a small change in her face. Less cold, less distant. That night, they shared another quiet meal. Tira leaned back against a tree, her armor set aside beside her. Her arms were marked with old scars and fresh bruises, but her eyes stayed sharp. Rian threw a small stick into the fire. So, he said, do you still think you don't look hurt? Tira gave a small laugh. It was the first time he heard her laugh. It was soft and short, but real. Maybe a little, she said. Rian smiled. Then we're even. They looked up at the strange sky. The moon's now rising. Tomorrow would bring more danger, more hard choices. But for now, they were not enemies. They were survivors. And for the first time, they were not alone. The next morning, the forest felt different. The air was still and heavy, as if the trees were waiting for something. Even the birds stayed quiet. Rian noticed it the moment he opened his eyes. He stepped out of the shelter and scanned the sky. The clouds were thin, and both suns were visible. But there was something else, a faint sound in the distance, a low hum, like a machine. Tira stood near the edge of the camp, fully armored again. She held her scanner high, her eyes fixed on the sky. Do you hear that? Rian asked. She nodded. Something is coming. It's not from your side or mine. Rian grabbed his own scanner. It picked up a moving object above the trees, small and fast, too fast to be a ship. He adjusted the lens. A black drone flew above them, circling slowly. It had no visible markings. Its shape was not familiar to either of them. It's searching. Rian said, for us. Tira added. They watched in silence. The drone flew in a wide arc, then disappeared over the hills. Rian looked at Tira. It didn't attack. Maybe it didn't see us. Or maybe it's waiting, she replied. They spent the next few hours strengthening the camp. They moved the shelter under a group of trees, added more branches on top to hide it from the air. Tira covered the camp's beacon with stones. Rian dug small holes around the area and filled them with loose sticks and sharp pieces of metal. From the crash, they worked fast but carefully. Neither of them spoke much. The drone's appearance had changed everything. This moon was no longer empty. That evening, they sat near the fire again. But there was little peace. Tira cleaned her blade while Rian opened the signal box. The power cell was weak, but the internal wires were fine. If we get the signal high enough, maybe it can reach orbit, he said. Still too weak, Tira replied. But if we connect my suit's core, it could boost the range. Will that affect your armor? She nodded. Some features, not all. Rian thought for a moment. It's worth it. If your people get the signal, maybe they'll pick us up. Tira was silent. She looked at him with a calm face, but her eyes showed something deeper. She stood up and walked away without another word. Rian sat alone for a while. He didn't know what she was thinking. Maybe she didn't trust him. Maybe she feared being taken prisoner if the signal reached the wrong people. But they had no other choice. This moon was now watched by someone else, someone neither of them knew. Later, Tira returned. She placed a small device in his hand. My suit's core, she said. Use it well. Rian nodded. I will. They spent the next 2 hours wiring the core into the beacon. It was tricky work. Sparks flew once, and Rian nearly dropped the tool. Tira held the wires steady, her hands precise and steady. They worked like a real team now, even without words. By nightfall, the beacon's light turned from red to blue. It's ready, Rian said. We wait for the right moment. Tira added. That night, they took turns keeping watch. Rian sat with his back to a tree, his blade across his lap. He listened to the forest, to the wind, to the soft sounds of the camp. When Tira took over, he lay on the ground and stared at the sky. He thought about Earth, about the academy, about the times he had trained for battle, but never expected to crash on a strange moon. With someone like her, he didn't feel fear anymore. He felt curious. He wanted to know more about her world, about why she fought and why she had saved him. Morning came slowly. The light from the twin suns spread across the trees. Tira handed him some dried fruit and water. They sat quietly again. Tell me about your home, Rian said. She looked at him for a moment, then spoke. It's cold in the north. Mountains so tall they touch the sky. In the south, we have oceans with silver water. I live near the sea. Rian smiled. That sounds peaceful. It was, she said. Before the war. He didn't ask more. He knew the feeling. His own home was once quiet to dot suddenly. The scanners beeped out another drone. This one came lower. They both crouched behind a large rock. The drone passed. Directly over the camp, it stopped midair, scanned the area, then flew off again. This time, it left behind a small round object. It floated near the edge of the forest, a sensor. Tira whispered, They're tracking movement. Rian looked at her. They know we're here. Yes, she said. We need to be ready. They didn't know who controlled the drones. It wasn't humans. It wasn't her people. But whoever it was, they were now in danger. Rian turned to the beacon. We need to send the signal now. Tira nodded. Do it. Rian pressed the switch. A soft hum filled the air. The beacon glowed bright blue. The signal began to rise, reaching up into the sky, carrying a single message. To survivors. One human. One allied. Location. Unknown moon. Request rescue. Now, they could only wait. Tira stood beside him, her face calm. Rian looked at her. You could have called your people. You didn't. She nodded. You gave me water. You didn't need to. Rian smiled. Guess that makes us even again. They both looked up at the sky. Somewhere above, someone had seen the message. Whether it was friend or foe, they would find out soon. For now, they stood side by side. Not as enemies, but as to people who trusted each other enough to survive together. Rian sat near the fire, sharpening his blade with slow movements. The beacon hummed softly beside him. Its blue light blinked every few seconds. A quiet reminder that help might be on the way. But help had not come yet. Tira returned from the outer edge of the forest, moving carefully. She held a bundle of dry branches and strange-looking fruit she had found. Her legs still gave her trouble, but she walked without asking for support. Her expression stayed calm as always, but Rian noticed she was breathing harder than usual. He stood up and took the branches from her arms without a word. She let him. The traps are still in place, she said. Good, Rian replied. Any signs of those drones again? She shook her head. Not today, Rian nodded. But he didn't feel at ease. Since the second drone had dropped that floating sensor, they had taken extra care to stay hidden. The camp was better protected now. But the silence in the forest didn't feel safe. It felt like waiting. Later that day, Rian noticed clouds building in the sky. Unlike the soft mist from earlier days, these clouds looked thick and dark. A storm was coming. He turned to Tira. We need to secure everything. This storm might be strong. She agreed quickly, and together they worked fast. They tied the shelter tighter to the trees. They covered the fire pit with stones and moved their tools and food packs into a waterproof bag. The beacon was wrapped in cloth and placed in a hollow tree nearby. The wind began to howl. Leaves flew through the air. The trees shook as thunder rolled across the sky. Rain started as a light drizzle, but quickly turned into a heavy downpour. Inside the shelter, it was cramped but dry. Rian sat on one side, Tira on the other. A small lamp between them gave off a soft yellow glow. The storm roared outside. Rian looked at her, her face lit faintly by the lamp. She had taken off her outer armor and was now wrapped in a thick cloth. Her hair was wet, clinging to her neck and shoulders. Her eyes stayed sharp. But there was something gentler in her face now. "You look tired," he said. "So do you," she replied. He chuckled. "Fair enough." For a while, they sat in silence, listening to the sound of rain beating against the shelter. Rian reached into his bag and pulled out a small container. Inside were 3 wrapped food packs, their last good ones. He offered her one. "Here. Not great, but it keeps us alive." Tira took it and opened it slowly. She took a small bite, then looked at him. "Why did you come looking for me that day?" she asked. Rian blinked. He hadn't expected that question. "I saw the signs," he said. "You were gone, and I knew something was wrong." "You didn't have to," she said. He looked at her closely. "You didn't have to stay with me either. You could have gone your own way. You didn't." Tira didn't answer right away. She leaned back slightly and closed her eyes. "Before this, I never trusted your kind," she said. "We were always told that humans only think of war, that you act without care." Rian raised an eyebrow. "Funny. We were told the same about your people." "Maybe both sides were wrong," she said. "Or maybe they just never got stuck in a storm together." He replied with a small smile. She smiled too. Just for a moment. The wind picked up. A sharp gust shook the shelter. A piece of branch hit the side. Both of them jumped slightly but stayed calm. "Reminds me of training camp," Rian said. "One time we had to camp on a frozen mountain. No fire, no shelter, just snow everywhere." Tira tilted her head. "Why? To teach us how to stay calm under pressure," he said. "Did it work?" "I guess so. I'm still alive." Tira laughed softly. "We trained in deep caves, total darkness. Had to listen and move without seeing anything." "That sounds worse," Rian said. "It was," she replied. The storm raged through the night. Inside the shelter, the warmth from the lamp and the shared silence made things feel safer. Time passed slowly. At some point, Rian's eyes grew heavy. He leaned back and rested his head against the wall of the shelter. "You should sleep," Tira said. "What about you?" "I'll stay awake," she replied. "You kept watch last night. My turn." Rian didn't argue. He closed his eyes, the sound of rain helping him drift off. When he woke up, it was still dark, but quieter. The storm had passed. Tira was sitting near the entrance, staring out at the forest. The sky was cloudy but calm. A faint light showed the first signs of dawn. He sat up and stretched. "Thanks," he said. She didn't turn around. "Something flew over while you slept. I only saw the shadow." Another drone. Maybe. It didn't stop. They both stepped outside. The camp was messy but not damaged. A few branches had fallen, and the traps needed resetting. But the shelter had held strong. Rian walked over to the beacon. It was still safe in the hollow tree. He checked the signal. Still active. Still blinking. "Do you ever wonder what happens if no one answers?" he asked. "Yes," she said. "But we keep going." He looked at her. "You always this calm?" "No," she said. "But I learned to act like it." He smiled. "You're better at it than me." They spent the morning repairing the camp and checking the forest paths. The sensor left by the drone was still in place, but inactive. It hadn't moved. Still. They stayed away from it. By the afternoon, the sky cleared. Sunlight came through the trees again. The forest sounded alive once more. Tira sat near the fire, looking thoughtful. Rian joined her. "If help doesn't come, we'll need to find a way off this moon," he said. "There's a mountain west of here," she said. "If we can climb high enough, we might reach a wider signal zone. Then we go together." Rian said. She nodded. Together. For the first time, the word didn't feel strange. Not enemies. Not strangers. Just two survivors, growing into something more than allies. 3 days had passed since the storm. The air was warmer now, and the forest had returned to its normal rhythm. Birds sang from the branches, and small animals moved through the bushes without fear. But Rian and Tira did not relax. They both knew the silence in the sky was not safety. It was a warning. The beacon still blinked every few seconds, sending its signal into space. Rian checked it each morning, each time. It showed the same message, signal sent, no response yet. He sat beside the beacon with tired eyes and rubbed his forehead. Tira walked over and crouched next to him. She carried a bag of dried roots she had cleaned earlier. Any change? She asked. No, Rian said. Still no answer. She handed him one of the roots. Eat. You need strength if we have to climb. Rian took the root and bit into it slowly. It had a strange taste, but it filled his stomach. They had talked about it the night before. If no one came soon, they would start walking toward the mountain. Tira had spotted it from a high tree. It was far, but tall enough to possibly reach a better signal range. Rian looked at the sky. If someone heard the signal, they should be here by now, unless the wrong side heard it first, Tira said. Rian nodded. I've been thinking about that. He turned to her. If a human ship comes, what will you do? I'll come with you, she said without hesitation. You. Don't fear what they'll do. I trust you, she said. And you trust them? That's enough for me. Rian didn't speak for a while. Her words meant more than she probably knew. Trust had been slow to build between them, but now it felt stronger than the walls of their shelter. As they stood to clean up the camp, a sharp beep came from the beacon. Both of them froze. Rian rushed to the device and read the blinking screen. Signal received. Response locked. Approach estimated in 1 day. His heart jumped. Tira, he said, turning to her. Someone heard us. They're coming. She stepped closer and read the message herself. Her calm face broke into a small, surprised smile. Who is it? She asked. I don't know. No name or ID. Just the time. 1 day, she said. They looked at each other, unsure whether to feel joy or worry. Rian took a deep breath. We should prepare, in case it's not a friend. That day, they worked harder than ever. They moved supplies to the center of the camp, secured the shelter again, and added fresh traps near the edges. Tira cleaned both of their weapons and set her scanner to high alert. As night fell, they sat together near the fire. Rian stared into the flames. Do you think they'll try to separate us? Maybe, Tira said. But I won't let them. He turned to her. You could still call your people. I wouldn't stop you. She shook her head. I made my choice. Why? He asked. Tira looked up at the stars. Because you treated me like a person, not an enemy, not a threat. You shared food. You asked if I was hurt. You stayed. Rian stayed silent, touched by her words. You're not like others I've met, she continued. You listen. I think you taught me how, he said. The fire crackled quietly between them. They sat in peace, both knowing the next day might change everything. In the morning, Rian woke early and checked the beacon. The message had changed again. Approach confirmed. Landing in local zone. 1 hour. He called to Tira. She came quickly, already in her armor. They're close, he said. They gathered everything and stood ready. The camp was quiet. Only the wind moved the leaves. Soon, a low sound came from the sky. A shape appeared above the trees. A small, sleek ship lowered through the clouds. It was painted silver, with no clear markings. It hovered for a moment, then touched down in the open space beyond the hill. Rian and Tira walked carefully toward the ship. His hand rested near his blade, but he didn't draw it. Tira's face was focused, but calm. As they reached the ship, the hatch opened. To humans stepped out, both in uniform. They looked surprised when they saw Rian. One of them stepped forward. Pilot Rian, he said. We received your signal. We're here to bring you home. Rian looked back at Tira, then turned to the officer. I'm not alone, he said. She stays with me. The officer looked at Tira, his expression guarded. She's not human, he said. She saved my life, Rian replied. More than once. The second officer spoke. She could be useful, but she'll need to be checked. She stays, Rian said firmly. Tira stepped forward. I'm not here to harm you. I chose to trust him. That should count for something. The first officer looked at them both, then nodded slowly. All right, you both come with us, but your story will be reviewed. Fair enough, Rian said. They entered the ship together. Tira stayed close to Rian, her eyes watching every corner. The ship lifted into the sky, leaving the forest moon behind as they sat side by side. Rian looked at her. We're not done yet, no, Tira said. But we're not alone anymore. For the first time in many days, they allowed themselves to feel hope. The rescue ship flew through open space, quiet and steady, inside. Rian sat beside Tira near the back wall. Across from them, the two officers who had picked them up worked silently at a control station. The atmosphere felt calm, but something. And the air was tense. Rian could feel it. He watched the stars pass by through the window. For the first time in many days, they were safe, at least. That's what it looked like on the outside. Tira had not removed her armor. She sat straight, her eyes scanning the room slowly. She didn't trust the crew yet, and Rian didn't blame her. Suddenly, a red light blinked on the control board. One of the officers leaned closer and tapped the screen. We're being followed, he said. The second officer turned. Another. Ship, no ID code. It's closing fast. Rian stood up. What kind of ship is it? The officer looked up. Same design as the drones that were tracking you. Fast and small. Weapons locked. Tira's eyes narrowed. They followed the signal. The ship shook lightly as it changed course. The officer grabbed the controls. They're firing warning shots. Rian moved beside him. Can we outrun them? Not for long, the officer said. They're faster. Tira stepped forward. Then we fight. The officer stared at her. You're not part of our command. She's right, Rian said. If they board us, we'll need to defend the ship. The second officer hesitated, then nodded. There's a small weapons locker in the back. If you help us hold the quarter, we'll try to reach the command post and send a full alert. Tira walked toward the back of the ship without waiting. Rian followed her. Inside the locker, they found simple rifles and a few shield belts. Tira checked each one with quick hands, then handed one to Rian. You remember how to use these? She asked. He nodded. I trained for this. Tira looked at him. Stay close. We fight together. They moved to the narrow corridor that led to the ship's main hatch. The officers ran forward to activate the emergency lock. The ship shook again. A loud beep came from above. They're attaching to the side. One officer shouted. Boarding in less than 1 minute. Rian took position behind a wall, his weapon ready. Tira stood across from him, shield belt activated. Her eyes never blinked. There was silence for a few seconds. Then a loud metal sound as the enemy ship latched onto theirs. A hole burned through the wall, and smoke poured in. From the smoke, dark shapes appeared. Tall, armored figures with glowing red eyes. Rian fired first, aiming low. The figure stumbled, but kept moving. Tira stepped forward with speed and knocked the enemy back with a strong hit to the chest. The first attacker fell. 2 more rushed. And Rian took cover and fired again. One enemy dropped. Tira moved like a storm. Her steps smooth and her strikes sharp. Her shield blocked a blast, and she pushed forward without fear. The officers called from the front. More incoming. We need more time. Rian answered without turning. Hold your ground. We're keeping them back. More attackers poured into the corridor. Rian's arm burned from the effort of holding his weapon steady. Tira was hit in the side, but her armor took the damage. She didn't stop. For several minutes, they held the line. Then, without warning, the attackers stopped. The last enemy stepped back and threw a small device into the hallway. Smoke filled the air again. Tira shouted, fall back. They moved quickly to the side room near the engine core. Rian coughed through the smoke. His eyes burned, but he stayed close to Tira. Inside the room, Tira sealed the door. They'll breach this soon, she said. We need another plan. Rian looked around. What if we overload the backup energy cell? It could stop them. Tira glanced at the control panel. It would damage the ship. We might not make it. Better than letting them take control. Rian said. Tira paused. Then she nodded. Help me, she said. They worked together, pulling wires and connecting power cables. The panel blinked red. The cell began to heat. You ready? Rian asked. Tira met his eyes. I trust you. They opened the side door and moved fast. Rion threw a small charge behind them. The last group of attackers rushed in. As they crossed the engine room, the cell overloaded. A wave of energy spread through the corridor. Lights flickered. The enemy group dropped to the floor, stunned by the surge. The officers appeared from the front corridor, coughing but alive. You did it, one of them said. The signal reached our command post. Backup is on the way. Rion helped Tara sit near the wall. She was breathing hard. One side of her armor blackened from the blast. You all right? He asked. I'm still standing, she said. The officer looked at them both. You to held the ship. Without you, we wouldn't be here. Tara looked up. This fight was not just ours. It was survival. A few hours later, the main human fleet arrived. The enemy ship had vanished by then. Fleeing before reinforcements could arrive, medical staff entered and treated the wounded. Rion and Tira were taken to the med bay. They were placed in side beds. Close enough to see each other, Rion looked across at her. That was too close. Tira gave a small smile. You asked if I was hurt. Now it's my turn. He laughed softly. Just tired. They stayed there, quiet, while the ship flew toward the nearest space station. The stars moved outside the window, silent and beautiful. Tira turned her head toward him. Thank you for fighting beside me. Rion nodded. I wouldn't have done it without you. They didn't know what came next. Questions would be asked. People would wonder how a human and an alien soldier had become a team. But that didn't matter now. They had survived together. The space station hung in orbit like a silent giant. Clean white corridors, tall glass walls, and the calm hum of life surrounded every corner. Medical staff moved in quiet steps while officers reviewed the reports from the recent battle. The name of Rion and Tira had already started to spread. Rion sat on a bench near the viewing deck. His arm was wrapped in soft bandage, and his jacket had a new patch. He watched the stars in silence. Behind him, doors slid open, and familiar footsteps echoed. Tira walked toward him. Her armor was gone. She wore a plain suit now, clean and simple. Her long hair flowed gently behind her. There were signs of bruises on her hands, but her steps were steady. You're walking fine, Rion said as she reached him. And you are still sitting, Tira replied. He smiled. I was enjoying the quiet. She sat beside him. The large window before them showed their planet far below. Lights blinked across its surface like tiny fires in the dark. It looked peaceful from above. Tira looked at the stars. We came here as strangers, Rion nodded. And now we're part of something bigger, she said. A soft voice called from behind. A young officer stepped closer. He held a small data pad and looked unsure. Captain wants to see both of you, he said. In the main hall. There's a meeting. Tira stood up first. Rion followed. They walked through the long hallway together. Others moved aside as they passed. Some nodded in respect. Some simply stared. Word had spread about how they had held the ship alone. Inside the main hall, a group of commanders and high officials stood near a large table. A wide screen above them showed images from the rescue, from the drone attacks, and from the ship's damaged interior. One commander stepped forward. His voice was calm and steady. You both have done more than expected, he said. Your teamwork saved lives. You have earned the trust of both our people and our allies. Tira bowed her head slightly. Rion stood still, his eyes on the screen. The commander continued, but there is a decision to make. Tira's mission was not just rescue. She came with information. Her people have discovered a larger threat. These drone ships are only the beginning. Rion looked at her. Tira gave a slow nod. They come from a system beyond our known space. She said, they did not speak. They did not offer peace. They only hunt. The room went quiet. We believe they are testing our defenses, Tira said. They study weakness. They learn before striking. The commander folded his arms. Then we must prepare. He looked at Rion and Tira. We want you to lead a joint team. Human and alien soldiers together. Train them, guide them, show them what unity looks like. Rion felt the weight of the words. He looked at Tira. She was already nodding. I will stay, she said. Rian gave a small smile. So will I. The meeting ended soon after. The room emptied, leaving the two of them alone. Rian leaned against the table. Did you know they'd offer that? Tira shook her head. No, but I hoped. What if it gets worse? He asked. Then we face it, she said, side by side. They left the hall and walked back toward the living quarters. People passed them, some smiling, some quiet. A few even stopped to thank them. Later that night, Rian stood on the upper deck, looking out at the stars again. The station lights dimmed, and the silence felt deeper. Tira joined him once more. I have something for you, she said. She held a small object in her hand. It was a metal badge, shaped like a circle with lines crossing through it. It's from my home, she said, a symbol of unity. Rian took it gently. Thank you. He looked at it for a moment, then handed her something in return, a patch. From his jacket, worn but clean. For strength, he said. They stood there in silence for a long while. Finally, Rian spoke. When we first met, you wore that heavy armor. You didn't trust anyone. Tira smiled. And you kept asking questions. Would you have guessed we'd end up here? He asked. No, she said. But I'm glad we did. He nodded. Me too. The stars continued to shine above them, quiet and endless. The war was not over. Danger still waited in the deep space beyond. But something had changed. Two lives had crossed. Two worlds had found a reason to stand together. And in that moment, as the stars moved slowly past the glass, they knew one thing for sure. They were not alone anymore. They were ready, together,